guys, this is the Authentic Empress. I started this video because the divine just brought it to my attention to just consciously take deep breaths, full inhales and exhales. And the reason why I felt led to make a video is because I was just sitting here reflecting on all the tension and all the projections, all the unasked, unasked for moments that will cause a person to constrict their body. How we have a tendency to store tension in our bodies, especially like when it comes to expressing ourselves. I believe that it's very intentional, the kind of feelings we experience throughout our body when we're under certain emotional pressure. And what I mean by that, like when you're fighting back tears and you feel that, what people call that frog in their throat, or that pressure in your throat where it literally feels like something is preventing you from fully exhaling, fully breathing, like just being a way that is primitive, is primary to your literal existence. And I was just getting all of this communication in such a little time about breath, and how breath is literally like the spirit of the divine. And all the different manifestations when people hyperventilate because they're anxious, they're panicking, they're in a state of fear. And it's not just something that happens with humans, it happens with animals. Like it happens with anything that has life, for real. You see what happens to flowers and plants when they are suffocated, when they don't have the proper ventilated environment. There's this card and in one of my oracle decks that literally says just breathe. And of course, like automatically and immediately you know that yes, that would be addressing like for somebody to relax, to call back or return to a state of calm, a state of zen, be conscious and mindful of their equilibrium and where they're in balance or where they're feeling thrown off, being aware and conscious of your breath, because we can be just carrying on like, doing certain actions. You could just be doing nothing but not fully breathing. I think about the trauma that's inflicted upon people and what was their breathing like when they were in those states of being, when they were in those toxic relationships, when they were in those unsafe environments throughout their past, and how much breath was literally robbed from them. How you release hydrogen and inhale oxygen. Like there's this beautiful harmonic cyclical and nature to life force energy, right? To spirit, to breath. And it's all synonymous, it's all the same. And as I'm just sitting here consciously breathing, it's like all the many ways that your air quality, your quality of thoughts, the quality or the lack thereof of communication, and how it has the effect. Not, I feel like just saying how it has the effect, but how it has such a major impact and influence on a person, depending on the nature or the quality of the communication, of the thoughts, of the air. So even when you are in a place where you can, or you're consciously inhaling and exhaling, the environment plays a big role with that, because you can be in an environment where it's completely polluted, whether it's like literally polluted, like there's physical pollutants in the air, or it could be polluted by people's thought projections, it could be polluted by people's language, whether that be verbal or nonverbal language, right? But there's so many factors, there are so many distractions, there are so many things that can constrict someone from fully breathing, putting your body in a better state of being and enhancing your body, because when a person hyperventilates, when a person takes a lot of short breaths, even the manifestations and how they show up as disease or ailments like asthma, sleep apnea, all of these things that have the potential to lead to death, literally, by you not getting enough, there's not enough thorough, full, wholesome breathing. And I was just sitting here thinking, like, bruh, like, things could have been so much worse. Like, for the fucked up shit that, I had to maneuver myself through, things could have been so much worse, and I'm saying more so like the end result of things. Like, for example, I'm single. I don't have any children biologically here, I don't have any diseases, I'm 100% healthy, and I have I'm in my right state of mind, like of all the things that people target and attack, that with the intent to restrict you, or make you feel limited, when your soul is literally limitless, when I don't think anybody can accurately count how many trees exist in our world, right? How many plants, flowers, trees in total. And the reason why I'm saying that is because of, the huge necessity, how deeply codependent and reliant we are on nature so we can breathe, you know? As a massage therapist and, someone who regularly guides clients through breath work, before I started this video, I was just sitting here consciously breathing and like really taking note of my breath. And, even now that I'm mentioning clients and stuff, is making me think about one of my clients today who was very short winded. And you can tell that, she possibly was dealing with a challenging time in her life. And just how short winded she was, and how she couldn't even allow herself to fully exhale. And all the synchronicities, like yesterday, I was at family's house, and there was this whole debunking and conversation that came up about Whitney Houston. Also, within the same time frame, there was an emphasis on exhale, waiting to exhale. For those of you who are familiar with that movie, Whitney Houston is one of the stars of that movie. Um, it's something that's very deep. The average mind may stumble across this video or content like this, and they may feel like it's boring. They may not be able to really grasp the concept, you know the gratitude alone that's in breathing. If you stop breathing, there's no more life in you. Like, you know breathing is so crucial to your literal existence. But so many of us, so many people literally are waiting to exhale, or they find themselves in situations, in scenarios where they feel restricted from exhaling. Because when a person fully exhales, right, you have to keep in mind that this whole process of breathing, right, the concept of releasing a form of air while consuming, inhaling, ingesting another form of air that has the potential to heal and replenish and rejuvenate your cells, your literal cells, right? So think about when you spend a lot of time not fully exhaling, like, just being restricted, whether that be being restricted by stress, being restricted by worry, anxiety, having, how you're going to accomplish something, how you're going to achieve something, when is something going to improve or get better, right? What's going to go wrong next? All of these things that bait us or bribe us, that blackmail us into not fully exhaling. When a person exhales and it's genuine, it's like this feeling of relief, right? I even I think everybody, every person with breath in their body is going to resonate with this topic, because those moments when you finally let yourself fully inhale and exhale, those emotional exhales where a person has suppressed and suppressed and suppressed their feelings and their emotions, and when they finally find that moment, or they are guided or aligned with a person who guides them through breath work or meditative breathing, and how during those exhales a person may release a lot of emotions, right? Hmm. I will say this: pain has the potential to go so deep to the burrows of hell itself, right? Pain has the potential to kill, literally. It's very intense, is very severe, is dangerous. Literally, like, even if you think about natural pain, right? And what I mean by natural pain is like, okay, childbirth, labor, you know, it's not really something you can get away from. There's things that you can do to modify or adjust and therefore decrease the intensity of the pain. But, in many cases, there is a pain that is necessary for life to come through, right? This even shows up through breath work. Speaking from experience, with doing breath work with people, that necessary pain, right? Getting on the other side of that pain, for a new life or for something beautiful to be birthed out of that. An example of that is, someone who's been suppressing feelings or emotions or their struggles, their challenges, or their insecurities around, things, people, or places that are put in place to wear that person down, restrict that person, make that person feel isolated in their own emotions. And when you feel that way, you begin to restrict yourself in a lot of ways. You restrict yourself from fully existing, fully being, like fully living, and it reflects in your breath, your ability to take deep inhales. So, a lot of times when people are short winded, when they're breathing, it reflects in how they express themselves in their lives or the restrictions that they place on themselves. Some of those or a lot of those restrictions and limitations come from your parents, your guardians, right? People who were around you in your earlier years. It's almost like a bridle, right? It's almost like a confusion of the intended use. And even when you think about, quote unquote, the intended use of a bridle on a horse, people who have horses, a lot of people will argue that that is to that is for like means of like direction and to break and stuff like that, right? If we're talking about riding a horse, blah 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 blah. But in actuality, man, wow, this is so crazy. They're taking me back to this memory when I was in Savannah, Georgia. And I remember getting ready to cross the street, and it's really popular there for people to do, I forgot what they're called. I think it's called a carriage or something, like for them to be ridden, or like horses are like pulling people like in carriages. Like that's a thing in Savannah. And I remember coming up to a carriage that was stopped, right? And it's almost like me and the horse had some type of telepathic communication, and this horse was in pain from the bridle. And I remember like feeling this deep emotion about that. Like I really felt It's almost like I felt offended by witnessing it, by it even being a thing, because I felt like I felt the horse's like pain. And I just remember feeling like, that is so selfish. That is so selfish of humans to do that, to a creature, like to, it's crazy, solely for their use, at the expense of that creature. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that energy in this world, where people will place bridles, people will put you in a position, people will restrict you from the truth at your expense for their selfish motives. And as many of us are actively healing from whatever hurt, whatever pain that has created some type of restriction, constriction, or limitation in some area of your life, some area of your existence, whatever, however it may show up, right? Speaking from my own life and experience, I'm grateful that even though I'm actively healing from something where I still cry about it, you know? There are some ways where discerningly I bridle myself on the topic, right? So, heavy emphasis on discerning, your own limitations, your own restrictions, your own boundaries. Because, in essence, when we are in control of them, they're boundaries. That's how they should be. But anytime, or in most cases where pain is attached and someone, quote unquote, places boundaries on you, it's really, in the form of limitation, restriction, constriction, like a boa constrictor. Literally, like it squeezes the literal life out of you. And I love God so much. I love God so much. How could you not love wisdom at its highest form? How could you not love that? Right? I'm telling you, when God says that the truth sets you free, it literally, suppression of truth, distortion of truth is one of the highest forms of weapons that is weaponized on the masses. Whether that be people in higher places, whether that be your mother, whether that be your lover, whether that be an acquaintance, an employee, a customer, whatever, an environment. The words were all intentional. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Words. Words. The truth sets you free, meaning a lie restricts you. A lie imprisons you. And it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. Because my thing is, even if there are people who have found some type of comfortability in being deceptive and being liars and being, just harsh, cruel, harmful to the mind, body, and soul of anybody, of any place, of any animal, right? And totally disregard that other words that were spoken is also, you will reap what you sow. God will always provide a way of escape. Before these things spring up, I shall tell you of them. Dreams, intuition, discernment, visions, prophecy, foresight, your senses, all of these things that we are armed with by God to navigate us through all of these projected prisons. I find peace in understanding the true foundational units of existing and recognizing, appreciating, showing gratitude to having those things be supplied to me despite the pain that I'm actively healing through. You know, I've been put in situations where I've been put in situations where I could have been kidnapped. I could have been in somebody's trunk. I could have been trafficked. I could have been in an environment, in somebody's room, in a building where the air quality around me is hardly breathable. I could have been, a kind of suppressed, a kind of restricted, a kind of constricted, a kind of imprisoned, where I could have died in it. I could have died there. Peace that surpass understanding. You don't have to be a person who believes in the Bible, who believes in Jesus, who believes in Elohim, Jehovah. You don't have to be a person to believe in that, to just pay attention to the meaning of words, the meaning of, in combination or collectively, what those words are communicating. So, for example, never mind whether or not Jesus is real. When it comes to the story of them being out on the ocean during a tumultuous storm with turbulent waters that seemingly, occurred out of nowhere. And Jesus is asleep while all this is happening, while all this chaos is happening, right? Not just in the elements, but also in the people. And Jesus being the only one literally sleeping through the chaos. and being awoken out of his sleep, right? Already confused as to how in God's name can you sleep through that? Do you not feel this boat rocking? Did you not get splashed by any of the water? Like, why are you so peaceful? And the takeaway from that, the takeaway from that is how he met chaos not only with peace, but with authority. He met chaos with this steadfastness and choice. The power of will, you know? Well, all the evil in our world, many of us are very much so aware of how, in so many ways, conditions conditions forced upon a person it's very sad to see it happen in the physical or manifest in the physical, such as, you know, a person being kidnapped, a person being trafficked, a person, you know, being enslaved or treated like a slave, you know, a person that's being bound by someone who they trust, putting them in a dangerous situation, right? Or creating dangerous conditions for them. You know, that's the physical manifestation or some physical manifestations of that. But what a lot of people overlook or disregard is how often that is done in spirit. There's a way for people to beat you down, jump you, okay? Bind you in the spirit via just using just using energy. Just, you can call it energy manipulation, you can call it alchemy, you can call it magic, you can call it witchcraft, you can call it whatever, right? But it's literally manipulating energy. All these things are interrelated for a reason, you know. But the point is, you can still experience similar like effects to the physical manifestations of someone being bind and kidnapped, somebody being, you know, whatever, imprisoned or in a jail. You can experience the same thing while your body is literally free, quote unquote. But a way that you can create wiggle room for yourself, a way you can rejuvenate what's dormant, what's asleep, what's dying, on the verge of dying, is to fully exhale. Inhale, exhale. It's not a small thing. It's not a cliche saying. It's not none of that. It's literal life. Literally. You need it to survive. If all the trees was wiped off the planet right now, what are we going to do? So even when people around you switch up, even when you can't trust your own family, even when you can't trust the person you love deeply, as long as trees fill this earth, you have every reason, you have every motivation, you have every confirmation that you can survive anything. But when you submit to these restrictions, to these limitations, to these whatever, that's being projected and casted, whatever these illusions are, when you submit to that, that's suicide. So I may have lost some people, lost money, lost things, you know, but I am still here with breath in my body. I'm in my right mind. I'm in my conscious mind. It don't hurt to be alive, you know. I don't and whatever physical hurts that I may collect along the way, there are guaranteed solutions. Because breath is not just breath, it's not just oxygen, it's not just all the scientific breakdown. Breath is God. Breath is God's image being within you. Breath is the Trinity. And that's why it's cyclical, between nature and us and life, on the planet overall. Life is the Trinity. It's from God. It's from God to nature to the creature. You don't have to go to a church to have God. You don't have to look the part, so to speak. You don't have to, sound super, intelligent and use a whole bunch of big words or none of that to have access to the divine. As long as you have breath in your body, I would say that one of the main things that should be a part of curriculum is breath work. Every curriculum. You may not have somebody in place that can teach you this, teach you that. You may not have the money to afford this, to learn that, but you have breath. You came here with breath in your body. You can master your breath. And in so many ways, that shifts your reality, because think about when you're in the heat of the moment, when something, frightens you, even if it's just the fright that comes with infidelity, the possibility of infidelity, the possibility of finding out that somebody you've been pouring your all to, somebody you've been in love with, you get what I'm saying? Finding out that this person has been stepping out on you, right? It's like it literally, like it it causes this immediate shutdown. We should not take betrayal lightly. We should not take betrayal lightly. That's not something we should be making cool. That's not something we should be normalizing. No, because you're taking death jabs at people in the spirit, and you have to pay for that. You will always have to pay for that. Shit, and the worst manifestation of how you pay for that is how people lose their life behind it. Because you're threatening someone else's life expectancy. You're threatening their ability to live, to exhale. Who has a higher probability of existing when it comes to swimming in the ocean, swimming in a pool? Who has the highest probability of surviving if, you know, who knows, like if something was to happen, if they was to get caught for a moment, or their shorts was to get, snagged on, who knows? I guarantee you, the person who has consciously done breath work has the higher probability of surviving that. But a person who is short-winded is most likely a person who is quick to panic, quick to be, or they're highly inclined to anxiety. They haven't fully released, the stress that's been built up. And I'm not saying it's to fault that person. That's just the reality of things. And so many, it doesn't matter the scenario, what the scenario is. That's the reality of things, right? You don't want to be that person that when somebody is provoking you, it does. You don't want to be that person that when you're under heavy provocation, you don't want to be like immediately impulsive, or you don't want to respond with an impulse that lacks discipline, an impulse that lacks self-control, and an impulse that lacks discernment and intuition and sense, the ability to be rational, the ability to be sensible, even when emotions are running high. Can you still be intentional with the words that you select? Or are you going to respond in a manner of feeling like you're under attack, and so you feel like you need to attack the person? It's becoming one of those things, right? Because even with mastering breath work, that doesn't mean that confrontation and provocation is going to cease indefinitely. That's not what that means. What it does mean is that it gives you more authority. It gives you a more steadfastness in your calm, in your peace, in your control. Because even when Yeshua was woken up and he felt slightly disturbed by being awakened from his sleep, he spoke to the elements with authority, with the intention to shift, with the intention to counteract the turbulence, the chaos. Everybody on that boat. You realize through all their panicking, through them responding to chaos with chaos, by themselves alone, they were not able to derive a solution. What was their solution? An image of God. Their solution was source, okay? Even if it's indirect but direct. Their solution was to go to the person who's in a state of peace, who's in a state of calm. A person whose peace surpasses understanding. Like, I don't understand how you're able to be so calm and peaceful right now. And this boat is rocking. There's water splashing everywhere. Look at the storm. Like, oh my God. Like, look how many people it is on this boat. Like, oh my God. The odds are against us. How are you so calm? How are you so peaceful? And that is what we should aspire to achieve. Because when you're in the face of rejection, when you're being rejected, when you're being insulted, when you're being disrespected, when you're, people are trying to abuse you, assault you, provoke you to anger, that storm provoked them to anxiety, to fear, total disbelief in self. Fear has the potential to completely remove you from God. Fear has the potential to separate you from God. When God said nothing shall be able to separate you, not, nothing will, because all that is determined, all that is based upon how you will your power, how you will your choice. However, nothing shall be able to separate you from God. And that's why it went into detail of, you know what? I'm just going to read it. That's why I went into detail. It said, not height nor depth, not people, place, or thing, principality, whatever. Nothing shall be able to separate you, right, from God. Your breath. And so I'm kind of at the end of a cycle where there were people who went out of their way to drive certain reactions or to drive me into a place of restriction and placing limits or limitation upon myself, suppressing my voice, suppressing my presence, whatever the case may be. But the thing about it though, I'm already someone who finds comfort in solitude. The other day I had a meeting with someone where, let's just say, there's a pause on that connection for now. And the person said to me, how could you be so cutthroat? And what they defined as cutthroat was, they made it seem like they made a final decision concerning me, after there was communication on both ends and I spoke my piece, and stood up for myself. And I even expressed, vulnerability, because that's just, a part of being truthful. But, you don't have to, it's, again, it's, you have to be discerning of the situation, right? Because you have to be discerning of where you can mention that vulnerability. But the beautiful thing about your courage to be vulnerable, even if that vulnerability is placed in hands that has intentions to weaponize that vulnerability against you, vulnerability is so pure. It's such a unit of innocence that the beautiful thing about someone trying to weaponize your vulnerability against you is that they will pay for that. They have to pay for that. It comes with a cost, right? And so after this person, made it seem like, their decision was final, I responded with peace in this particular situation. And that's because of the foresight that I had involving the situation. So again, like the scriptures I mentioned earlier, before these things spring up, I shall tell you of them. Your intuition, your dreams, spirit communication, right? Because everything is birthed in the spirit before it's birthed in the flesh. Everything is created in the unseen realm before it is seen, right? And that's our advantage. That is our advantage. When you don't allow yourself to be separate from the divine. So I spoke my farewell, a respectful farewell, and I also requested a severance, right? And to me, the severance was an energetic thing. And there are some things, there are some people, there are some places we discerningly must separate ourselves from. You should be able to separate yourself from anything, anybody, any place, but the divine, right? But you know, a lot of people find themselves conflicted with that because of the illusion of loss, right? All this fear mongering that comes along with things, you know, contracts. But God didn't give you the spirit of fear. So why even indulge, you know? Blind faith in the divine, childlike faith in the divine. You can't tell that kid that that imaginary friend is not real. They believe, they see that imaginary friend, right? Or they gonna go hard for it. You feel me? It's gonna take a little more than that. And even, you know, an extension from that is how being in a place of being more conscious spiritually and knowing that spirits roaming the earth is a real thing. Knowing that ancestors and angels and all of that is a real thing. That children, gifted children, literally can see spirits, right? But she said that she defined me doing that as well as blocking her number, blocking other forms of contact, and proceeding with my journey. She defined that as being cutthroat. She proceeded to try to project a narrative from her lack of understanding, right? Of why, or to prove why it is cutthroat. And, you know, I allow her to speak, and I also sit down. Anyway, it's okay. You know, that opened up a space for her to gain a different understanding, a different perspective, right? From another world, because we're all worlds, right? And I said, no, you know, I simply viewed it as my mission being complete here, because that's just how God operates with me. You know, I kind of have somewhat of what I call a shamanic journey, you know, with my path. And so if a door is closed, or, you know, my mission was complete there. Now, is it always that simple? Is it always that easy? No, you know what I'm saying? Again, it depends on the context. Of course, something like a partner, a lover, boyfriend, husband, girlfriend, wife, something like that is a little more challenging to release. You get what I'm saying? Because that person They literally, not only were they in your world, but they was in the sacred place of your world. It's one thing for people to enter your world through your energy field. It's another thing for people to enter the chambers of your heart. Chala, I'm talking about something very important. This is not the time for that. Lie down. Thank you. When someone is given sacred, special access to the chambers of your heart, and they go in there and vandalize, that's not something easy to come back from. There's repairs that are required. There are particular parts and things that may take time to order, and think about when a person gets stitches, or when something is cut, it takes time, right? It takes time. Even a scar itself, you can carry a scar for years and years. Don't you know there's this thing in massage therapy called cross fiber friction? Cross fiber friction is particularly used for what we call adhesions, or quote unquote scars and stuff like that. And it has the ability to basically, what we're doing with cross fiber friction, we're breaking up the scar tissue, the extra buildup of cells, right, that your body creates to seal and protect yourself. And you're basically just smoothing it out. And whatever residual scar tissue or fluid, whatever the case may be, your lymphatic system, right? We guide that waste, because it's considered waste. We guide it through your lymphatic system. When I say people can believe what they want, okay? All I'm gonna say is God is very intentional with how we're created. Like, the human body design is so magnificent, bro. And that's why when people talk about studying yourself, study self, study self, study self, master self. There's so much that we can invest our attention to improve ourselves, to improve our lives and those around us, to improve the environment. But instead, can you imagine those people who invest the bulk of their time in creating destruction, or being harsh, brutal, cruel, harmful to a place, to a person, to a thing? Can you imagine the condition of their inner world? Can you imagine the condition of their chambers to their heart? Bro, like, very, very, very much so intentional. Very much so intentional, okay? And so the reality is, there are a lot of humans who fall short, okay? And what I mean by that is because of where they choose to invest their attention. And in most cases, their attention is focused on, somebody, someplace, a bag, an image, right? Some type of pleasure or something. More so than it is their self in a healthy way, okay? Because it matters to say that. It matters to be very intentional with our words, because we know what it looks like for people who are selfish, for people who are narcissistic, right? At the expense of others. So there's also a selfishness that's unhealthy. There's a selflessness that's unhealthy, you know? So it's all about the balance of things. It's all about discernment, you know. Hmm. Sorry. Oh my gosh. So yeah. Yeah. Breathe, bro. It might be hard to withstand some pain, bruh, but you gotta fight to breathe. Think about when a person, oh God, this is gonna be, so trigger warning, okay? Think about for those people who unfortunately lose their lives in ways where, let's say, somebody who's choking on their own blood, right? They're fighting to breathe, right? Ugh, that shit is crazy. There is a way spiritually that people can do that, that a person can do that to somebody. In a lot of cases, that's the intent, you know, whether they are conscious of what they're being puppeted for, okay? The intent is to like flood you out type shit. Okay, get you to drown on your own emotions. And sometimes even the emotions of others. That's why when learning how to swim, you have to master breathing. Ain't it ironic that the literal beginnings of our life, we're inside of fluid. We're inside of an ocean. We have a codependency to an entity, to a host, as it pertains to our ability to breathe, right? It's interesting to be born in fluid, being able to breathe in fluid, and somehow in between time losing that skill, right? Or that skill being diminished to a point, or to the manifestation of swimming lessons and swimming classes, learning how to swim, and how one of the main things is to master your breathing. We could talk about running track. One of the main things is mastering your breathing. Working out, yoga, one of the main things is mastering your breathing. Being in labor, childbirth, one of the main things is mastering your breathing. Send oxygen to your brain when you pissed off. Okay? Send oxygen to your heart when it's been stabbed in. Send healing to areas and parts of your body where you feel those aches, where you feel those jabs, where you feel those restrictions. You know how with chiropractors, yes, they help with bone alignment and all of that, but those cracking sounds that a lot of people hear, with most of the work that a chiropractor does, the chiropractor will tell you that it's trapped air in the bones or in crevices of the bone, right? Now let's think about that. When we're looking at it from a perspective of energy, right? Spiritually, right? again, like I said earlier, how you exhale hydrogen and you inhale oxygen. There's air that has to be released, that's supposed to be released. It's intended to be released. But if you're not properly breathing, properly moving your body around to release that, it can literally get trapped throughout your body and create tension or pain that lasts longer than it has to. Discomfort that lasts longer than it has to. You know what I'm saying? When somebody trying you, bro, breathe. And I ain't even talking about no, and be mindful if you're being short-winded. Be mindful of the nature of your breath during these moments of potential rage, anger, sadness, depression, whatever, bro. Breathe. Imagine if we applied breath work to everything sent to destroy us or cause us to go into this state of self-defeat, suicidal ideation. Imagine if we just take the time to just thoroughly inhale and exhale. You don't have to believe in the power of it. The reality, that's the beautiful thing. That's the beautiful thing about the divine. The reality is the way our bodies have been designed. Naturally, when you thoroughly inhale and exhale, whether you feel like it's bullshit or not, when somebody tell you to breathe, you're sending oxygen to areas where you're rejuvenating, you're creating balance, you're sending healing aid to those areas, okay? Even if it's just like to your mind or parts of your brain. And you're releasing energy that's basically fueling the anger, fueling the desire to crash out, right? And again, this is not to say that you won't have those moments, but I promise you, the more you consciously apply it, be conscious of it, be conscious of self, be conscious of breath over time. Again, the goal we should aspire to achieving is that peace that surpass understanding. Dang, that person did all that to you and I don't see how you survived that. Damn. Peace that surpass understanding. Damn, it looked like all the odds were against you, for real. Like, I have no idea how you got out of that, bro. Like, how did you? Peace that surpasses understanding. The ability to levitate, the ability to navigate, the ability to resurrect, the ability to rise above, the ability to get through and get on the other side. Many people lose that ability by submitting to the limitations of this world. It don't matter how many times somebody creates some type of limitation or restriction for you and they do everything in their power to try to keep you there. You have to choose to stay there at the end of the day. You have to choose. You have to choose to stay there. And that's why when those of us choose not to, or when we choose not to stay there, or to rise out of something that was intended to kill us, something that was intended to distort our minds, to drive us crazy, to put us in the psych ward, to drive us to the streets, to drive us to low self-esteem, Self-esteem so low that you begin to just destroy yourself, demean yourself, degrade yourself. All these places that people try to bully you into. That's why they're so confused. That's peace that surpass understanding. They don't understand how. It's worked on so many others before you. Any other time, when people are on a boat and, a storm, a thunderstorm happens and the waters become turbulent, most people, everybody else usually are fearful. Why not you? We're crafting these storms in your life, but like what? Like you're still, what? And all that again cycles people back to God. When the words say every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess, people will be, it is guaranteed for people who are intentionally trying to create limitations, restrictions, or imprison you. It is guaranteed that they will be brought to their knees. They shall be brought to their knees. A lot of it, most of it by their own doing. Some people willingly, people who, submit to satanic worship or say satanic means or witchcraft to get things done. In the moment, the illusion is for them to feel some type of grandeur or feel, some type of false power. That's the illusion. The illusion is, that excitement for, the ability to gain something that they want so bad. So bad. And not even realizing and making that very decision to work against somebody who is pure-hearted, somebody who's innocent, somebody who don't deserve that, somebody who's anointed, somebody who's a prophet in some cases, and not everybody are prophets. But the point is, a person who don't deserve it. That within itself, making that decision, making that choice, that's the person bowing down. Literally, that's them bowing down. Every knee shall bow. That's what was said first. And after was, and every tongue shall confess. By the end of it all, they're going to have to confess. And I heard they're going to have to confess that God is able. That is God. There's this song I'm hearing, and the lyrics, the main lyrics that I'm hearing is, it's it's all good, but I know better. It's all God. And if I was just anybody, I'll say it's all good, but I know better. It's all God. That's the reality. I think I should do another video talking about stillness as an extension to this video. Because think about all the trouble you get yourself into just by not being able to be still. Just embrace stillness, you know. Think about all the trouble people get themselves into because they don't know how to embrace themselves. They don't know how to embrace solitude. They have to have people around. They have to be around somebody. They have to, okay? And that's why, you know, a lot of times people who are like that, they have to experience fucked up people. Like, they have to experience those people that they're holding on to so desperately, just being toxic, disrespectful, unbearable, you know? Just so they can appreciate themselves and break out of this spell of idolatry. What if everybody has superpowers for real though? And what if everybody's dominant superpower is breath? The ability to breathe. Because it doesn't matter what other kind of superpower you have, bitch. If you can't breathe, if you're not breathing, if you're not alive, if you're dead, they're useless. I'm going to conclude here. Bless you. Whomever is guided to this video, bless you.